It's 4 o'clock in Los Angeles. It's 6 o'clock in Chicago. And it's 7 p.m. in New York City. Hello, everybody. I'm Mad Dog DeCipio. This is a very, very special edition of What's the Buzz, America's Best Podcast tonight. For the record, with Dan Ealey and a return to Junior's Farm 50 years later. I am joined, as I am each and every week, God to help me, by Amelia the Pitbull Chapman. And the voice of reason, my new co-host, entertainer extraordinaire, Rick Rico Style. How are you, Rick?
Hello, hey, how you doing? How's everybody?
I'm good, baby. I'm good.
Good, good.
Amelia, staying out of trouble?
Yes, I have tried because it's too hot out here for me to get into trouble.
And you're
so-
the reason I keep the Excedrin Company in business, lady. I got news for you. Let me officially introduce my guest of honor tonight. Our special guest is a returning guest. He's been here a few times before. He will be back with us again. I assure you of that. His name is Dan Ealey. He is a Renaissance man. He is a producer, a collector, a private detective from time to time. Most of the time, he just aggravates his wife. But right now, she's out of town, so he don't have to worry about nothing.
She
My
could be
friend,
watching, so
how
I
the
won't be
hell are
saying
you?
it. I won't be discussing any controversial subjects.
This show is controversial enough. Anyway, Dan, how are you, babe?
I'm great. I'm excited to be here. The month of June this year is very exciting. About this time 50 years ago, I was at the farm and I was being told by Jimmy McCullough, don't come down tomorrow. And they had never told me that before. And so I said, what's going on? He said, it'd just be better if you're not here tomorrow. Yeah. So I complied with his request, and I did not go down on the 17th, which would have been today, the day before Paul's birthday. I did not go. And that night in Tennessee, we had a huge electrical storm. Lots of lightning, rain, torrential rain. It was pretty bad weather.
Yeah.
So the next day, I was in compliance, I thought. So I loaded back up my Ford Torino station wagon, and I hit Interstate 40 back down to the farm. And when I get there and get inside the guest house, I noticed they're bringing in these milk crates of ice and champagne. And I noticed the little activity out the window down by the pond, where there was a picnic pavilion.
Yeah.
And I had given Paul a heavily embroidered black shirt that had birds on it. And when I looked out the window with my binoculars from the guest house, I saw Paul, and he was wearing my shirt.
Yeah.
Which I remember just saying, he's got my shirt on.
Yeah.
He's got my shirt on.
Sure.
And so Jimmy tells me, look, we're having a little get together for Paul's birthday.
Right.
That was supposed to have happened the night before, but it was canceled because of the storm.
Right.
And I wasn't supposed to be there. Thank goodness.
Wow.
Thank you, Lord, for the storm that night. Because I'm back the next day, and Jimmy says, look, Paul's wanting us to work the gate. We don't want to. We want to go to the party.
Sure.
But you could do it. I said, what does work the gate mean? I mean, I was only 19.
Yeah, sure.
He said, you know, you will be at the gate. You'll let people in that should be in, and you'll keep everyone else out. I said, well, how will I know? He said, it's going to be, you'll know, Jerry Reed, Chet Atkins, and Roy Orbison. And if you'll do this, then we'll take you down to meet Paul later. So I said, okay. So I headed out to the entrance. It was very hot, like today is here in Tennessee.
Yes, sir.
It's in the night, a lot of humidity. It was about, I would say, about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm out there in the heat of the day, and I see a black Porsche coming down the road, signaling to turn in.
Yeah.
And I got up on my toes to look inside the car as it was turning, and it was Roy Orbison.
Wow.
He was wearing black leather jacket, black leather pants, black T-shirt. His hair was jet black, combed down.
Yeah, that was Roy.
The man in black. I mean, that's Paul's favorite color too.
Sure.
But as I flagged him through, I noticed all this, and I was looking, and I thought, wow, he's got all leather. It's hot. Then I thought, whoa. It's more important to look cool than to be cool.
Absolutely.
So
and on that note, my friend, we have a couple people here that have some questions, and we have an entirely new audience that's never heard Dan Ealey's tale of the unbelievable, remarkable, you can't make this up stuff. And we're going to talk about this in just a second. I want to tell everybody it is indeed Paul McCartney's birthday tomorrow. So, from What's the Buzz Popcast, America's best popcast. Happy birthday,
Paul McCartney.
I think Paul's going to be
Happy birthday.
51, maybe, right? 52. He looks remarkable for a guy 80 plus years old. Dan, he's the 83 or 80. What is it? 83 now.
He'll be 82 tomorrow.
Wow! Happy birthday!
I know. Oh, it's Ringo is 83. That's right.
Yep. I sent a photograph collage to his office today, telling him happy birthday, and the collage had all the photos I've been able to find with him wearing my shirt, which was on his birthday in '74. And then again on his birthday in '76 at the LA Forum.
You're going to see that, and the world will see that tonight, Dan. We're going to put together. I've actually put together two very special videos in tribute to Junior's Farm 50th anniversary, and the man Dan Ealey, who helped, whether you know it or not, and I'm sure you do, who helped alter the course of rock and roll. And I cannot underestimate the power of that statement. Dan Ealey, the man with us tonight, our guest, my friend, he is the guy I have to publicly thank for introducing me to the legendary Jeff Britton, an incredible rock and roll drummer, certainly Hall of Fame material, and a guy who's played with nothing but the best over the last 50 plus years. So on behalf, Dan, of Amelia, Rick, and myself, thank you. And I mean it from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for introducing me to Jeff. It was a remarkable moment in my life. I was like, I want to tell everybody right now, I was like a little schoolgirl on the phone today, okay?
You did squeal a little bit.
I did, absolutely. I sure the hell did.
It was a little embarrassing.
It was for me too.
And then he complains about me doing it, right?
Absolutely. But I want to tell everybody that our new co-host, Rick Style, is here tonight. He's got some questions for you. So, Rick, I know you want to be the first one in here. I want to let you go. Go for it, brother.
Well, I'm not going to ask any heavy-duty questions. By the way, how you doing? And it's a pleasure to meet you, man. Really, it really is, man. Because I got to tell you, going back as far as you did, I myself, I was a major fan of the Beatles as a kid coming up. Even though I was very young when they first came out, I still thought they were like one of the greatest groups ever. Anyway, one of my questions would be the song Uncle Albert. Do you know the one I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, of course, yes.
I'm sure you. I know you do. What was behind? What is the story behind that song? Because it goes all over the place.
I think that was about his family.
Really?
His uncle and his auntie Jen. He calls out. I think that was, of course, that was on Ram. Now, I was still in high school when that song came out. And
yeah, me too.
I was working on an arrangement for our orchestra in high school. And during that period, because of just the fact I was working on that, I got nominated for most talented at our high school along with another person. But it's a great song. I love Uncle Albert Admiral Halsey.
Oh yeah, it's one of my all-time favorites.
Inspired by his family.
Any other questions, Rico?
Yeah, well, this is it's a kind of a question. Paul McCartney being a bass player, he changed his Hofner bass to a Rickenbacker. Am I correct with that? He and they also say that he was like the second best bassist. Do you agree with that?
Oh yeah, well, it was his melodic style on the bass. He changed from just doing root notes. I'm a bass player, and I was inspired by Paul. But his style is that he put the melodic tones and riffs in the bass playing instead of just hitting the root notes.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Get too far down the rabbit hole because Rick, and this is I'm glad that you brought up the Rickenbacker, but Paul has a special connection to a very, very special Rickenbacker bass that I suspect, in fact, I know you're going to see tonight. But don't get too far down that rabbit hole because Dan really has the mother of all Rickenbacker bass stories for you. So, what I'd like you to do, Dan, I know you've told the story 1,000,001 times. I'm going to ask you to tell it 1,000,002.
I love the story.
Let's go. Oh, I'm sorry, Amelia. You have questions?
No, I just love the story that he's about to tell. But I know that you had said that you had Roy Orbison come in, Jerry Reed, and you finally got to the party. Were you able to spend a little bit of time with each one of them to speak with them a little bit, like Roy Orbison, Jerry Reed?
Well, here's how it worked. Me, I was at the entrance, and the get together under the picnic pavilion at the pond was about 400 or 500 feet. Down to my right, and I could see people. I could see them there. Chet Atkins' white Cadillac was parked in the grass, and by the time I got down there, they were all gone except Roy and Wings with Paul and Linda. But I had anticipated that Paul was going to send up one of the guys in the band to get me. That was my total expectation, is one of the guys, Jimmy or Jeff or someone, will come up and retrieve me in a little bit. And I'm waiting and I'm watching, and I see someone leave the pavilion walking through the field. And I get up sort of on my toes to look to see who is that. And it was Paul. And he was walking alone through the field toward me, which is sort of unnerving when you're 19 and a huge Beatles fan.
Yes.
And the mistake I made is I reached into my pocket and I pulled out my little camera and I put it up on the gate post because I was paranoid that.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But Paul walks up to me. And he says, "You're the one with the bass." And he says, "It would be silly for me to keep it." And he and I walked together back down to the pavilion, and there's Roy standing there in all of his black leather, and Paul says, Dan, I want you to meet Roy Orbison. And I call it my greatest introduction. I've met quite a few people, but that has to top it when Paul McCartney introduces you to someone, and it happened to be Roy Orbison.
Now, can you imagine that, folks? Can you imagine? You're 19 years old. You're a kid working, living and working in Middle Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
You happen to get a hold of a little piece of information and you run with it. And here you are on Paul McCartney's birthday having a conversation with the man that Dan Ealey calls Beethoven.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget that. I met Beethoven, is what you told me.
I told my friends that night, well, it is a surreal experience.
It really is, Dan.
After you've watched him
through that, please.
After you've watched him on TV for 10 years.
Yeah.
I was at my movie theater on February 9th, 1964 with my Cub Scout group. I was 9, and a kid in my scout group named Mike Nichols. Wherever you are, Mike, I'm looking for you. But he yelled across the seats, "Hey, Dan, are you going to watch the Beatles tonight?" And I said something I haven't said in 50 years now. What's the Beatles? He said, just watch Ed Sullivan tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. I watched Ed Sullivan, and like Rico, everyone else, our lives changed the next day. It was 10 years later to find me standing toe to toe with Paul, carrying on a one-on-one conversation. It is a mind-boggling experience, and to beat that, it's on his birthday, and he's wearing the shirt you gave him.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
It's a bit. I will absolutely echo the word unnerving. I had that experience many, many years ago with Mr. Frank Sinatra.
Uh-huh.
At the time, I was a smoker. And if you knew anything about Mr. Sinatra, he loved his cigarettes and he loved his cocktails. He was a brandy guy, brandy over the rocks. And I met Mr. Sinatra in 1988 in Atlantic City. And I had the chance to talk to him. And we were, he gives me a cigarette. He goes, "Do you smoke, Pally?" I went, "Yes, sir, I do." He goes, "Here, have one of these." So he gives me this cigarette, and I'm standing there. I'm 31 years old. I'm standing there having a smoke with Frank Sinatra. He offers me a drink, and I was never a drinker, so I had a Coke. I had a Coke. And I understand, Dan, the story, the impact of it. And then you think to yourself, you're walking away from the conversation on, fuck, I just talked to Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
Well, I drove back home that night, and there was an outdoor concert here in my hometown, and I went there to see my friends. And I'm telling them I just met Beethoven. Then I tell them that it's McCartney, because I said it by saying, I told them, look, who can you meet in your life that will be remembered 1,000 years from now? Absolutely. And I said, I just met someone who will be remembered 1,000 years from now. And that was the dramatics of that experience.
Yeah. I'll tell you what's, I will share with everyone, with your permission, Dan, I will share with everyone a piece of film I put together. Let's all watch this. It's very self-explanatory, and keep in mind, look at Paul. He's wearing a very bedazzled, embroidered black shirt. That was the shirt that Dan Ealey gave him. This was his birthday, 1974, June 18. Let's all take a look.
You should have seen me with a poker man. I had a honey and a bed of grand. Just in a nick of time, I looked at his hand. I was talking to an Eskimo. Said he was open for a fall of snow. When I caught the sea line ready to go. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. Down to Junior's farm where I wanna hello. Low life, high life, let's go. Take me down to Junior's farm. Take me down, Jimmy. Sake of a couple of fans. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. Down to Junior's farm where I wanna hello. Low life, high life, let's go. Take me down to Junior's farm. Let's go, down to Junior's farm where I wanna hello. Low life, high life, let's go. Take me down to Junior's farm. Everybody tag along. Store. The price is higher than the time before. Oh man, ask me why is it more? I said you should have seen me with a poker man. I had a honey and a bed of grand. Just in a nick of time, I looked at his hand. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. Down to Junior's farm where I wanna hello. Take me down to Junior's farm. Let's go, down to Junior's farm where I wanna hello. Let's go, take me down to Junior's farm. Everybody tag along. Take me down to Junior's farm.
The legacy of Junior's
amazing.
farm 50 years later with our special guest, Dan Ealey, who was there from day one. Dan, it had to be a surreal experience for you on many, many levels, not the least of which getting to meet and converse with and actually hang out and party with the idol of all idols, Paul McCartney. He was the guy. And not only that, but to hang out with people like Jerry Reed and Chet Atkins, one of the greatest guitarists of all time, Roy Orbison, arguably one of the great, if not the greatest voice ever in rock and roll music. Even some would argue greater than Elvis. In fact, he was Elvis's favorite singer.
Yes.
What's that tell you?
Well, he's a great singer.
I'm telling you what. So let's talk a little bit about this. That video is a time capsule in the life of Dan Ealey. You were a 19-year-old kid at the time. For the benefit of those who've never heard the story from the beginning, would you tell it, please?
How I got there from the beginning?
Yes, sir.
Well, I was a manager of a self-service gas station, and a self-service gas station in 1974 was new. Self-service was new.
Yeah.
And it's pretty boring job as a manager of a self-service gas station. I'm always looking for ways to occupy myself. I was playing in a band. I was managing and booking bands. And I'm a huge Beatles fan, had been for many years. And I pick up the Nashville Tennessean one morning, and there's a little blip in a gossip column that says, Paul McCartney rumored to visit Music Row. It was very small, but it was huge to me. And I said to my friends, if Paul McCartney's coming to Nashville, I'm going to meet him. So 2 days later, I pick up the Tennessean, and Paul is pictured with Stella and Mary and Linda getting off the plane at the tarmac in Nashville. So that launched me into some crazy action plan. I've got to get something together here. And on my desk was Melody Maker magazine, which I loved it. I subscribed to it from England.
Sure.
It was no politics in it like Rolling Stone. And I could never wait to get the next issue. It's laying on my desk, and I thought, hey, if Paul is in Nashville, he's going to have a press conference. They'll want reporters there. I'll be a reporter. And I opened the front page of Melody Maker, and I thought, I'll be from Melody Maker because it's a British trade paper. He's British. That'll be perfect. So I looked down the editorial column, and it said, Chris Charlesworth, U.S. editor in New York, and it had a phone number. So I thought, okay, I'm going to call him up. I'm going to pretend I'm a reporter. I don't want him to ask a lot of questions. So I've got to keep the opportunity for him to ask about my experience to a minimum. So I dial it up. He answers the phone. I got a buzzword, and that buzzword was stringer reporter. Stringer reporter. So I said, this is Dan Ealey. I'm a stringer reporter in Nashville. Paul McCartney's here, and I want to represent your magazine here.
Love it.
He says, well, what do you have experience? What kind of experience do you have? So, of course, I have experience, but I'm going to need a letter from you. He said, well, I can do that. I can take care of that. I said, I need a letter of authorization from you. And I got that letter on the 9th of June. I still have it. It's up here on the wall behind me. And now the problem next is I've got this letter and I've got this plan, but I don't know where he is. So how am I going to find out? I mean, it's hush, hush. I just started calling everyone. I knew just enough people in Nashville to make some phone calls and just throw it out there.
Yeah.
So I called down to BMI. I called down to ASCAP. And anyone I could get, I'd say I'm a reporter from Melody Maker magazine, and we're here to cover Paul. And I would get bits and pieces of information. One was he's in Lebanon, Tennessee, on a farm. It's a doctor's house, a large mansion with a pool, and it's on Franklin Road. That was all I ended up having to go on when I got in my car on Sunday, June 16th, which I was off from work. So I hit the interstate. I had my bass guitar in the car. I still can't think why I decided to take my bass. I don't know. But I loaded it up. I got the letter in the front seat. I head down to Wilson County. I find Franklin Road, which is a rural back road on a Sunday morning. and there's nobody on it but me. And all I see when I'm looking at the right and left driving up and down this country road is normal houses, your regular bungalow type houses. Nothing that would look like Paul McCartney staying there. So I drive so far down and I just thought, I'm going to give up and just go back home. And I turned the car around and I thought, well, I'll ask somebody on the way back. But the problem was there was no one to ask. I finally see this man walking along the road in overalls. And I thought, he's a farmer. He's not going to know anything. Okay, I'm going to talk to him, but don't mention the Beatles. That's what I told myself. So I pull up and I reach over to my passenger side window and I rolled it down and he sort of stuck his head down. And I said, sir, do you know where there's a doctor's house here on Franklin Road, a large house, a mansion with a pool? And he immediately said, there's not one. I said, are you sure? And I repeated it. A large house, a mansion with a pool. He said, no, there's not one. I said, it's a doctor's house. He goes, there's not one on Franklin Road. So then I did it. I said, well, one of the Beatles is staying there. He said, you mean those fellers from England? I said, yes, sir. Yes, sir. They're from England. He goes, well, they staying up at Junior Putnam's place. I said, where is that? He said, well, it's on up the road here, but he don't have a swimming pool. I said, now tell me where it is. I didn't want to load him up in the car and have him show me. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss it now. So he tells me, and I turn around, and my plan is I'll drive by it, and I'll pull in the next driveway, and I'll back out, and I'll pull back out and go back and look at it, and I'll check this place out. Yeah. Now, when you pull up at this farm, you know that it's the place because there's nothing else like it there. It's a 133-acre spread. There's a colonial mansion up on the hill.
Yeah, boy.
It has a large entrance. So you know, yes, this is the spot.
Yeah.
When I passed the house and I pulled in the next driveway, it's a little bungalow house. And I looked in the yard, and there is Denny Lane and Jimmy McCullough under the shade tree. So I parked the car. I grabbed my letter out of the passenger seat, and I got out of the car, and I said, I'm Dan Ealey. I'm with Melody Maker Magazine. Chris Charlesworth sent me. And they were kind of pretty much speechless. And I just looking at them, they're looking at me. And I said to Jimmy, you know who Chris Charlesworth is, don't you? He goes, yeah, I know who Chris Charlesworth is. And that was where we got started. And I get a guitar out of the car and I ask him, Denny, to show me the opening lick to Band on the Run. Jimmy said, I don't want to play no guitar. And Jimmy said, let me see it, man. I'll show you. Now, Jimmy was the closest to my age. He was only about 2 years older than me. And so that was the first day we sort of hit it off. They told me Paul doesn't like reporters. And I said, that doesn't matter to me. I don't care anything about writing anything. I just wanted to hang out with you. And Denny gets my Rickenbacker bass.
Wow.
And he starts dancing around with it, playing.
Wow.
And there he is. So I said, do you like it? He said, Paul would love this. Look, it was new. It was about 3 months old. I got it from Manny's Music Shop in New York. And I said to Denny, then give it to him. And I left it. And
it's true. True story.
For 3 weeks, it was gone. I was there every day for the next 3 weeks, hanging out with them. I always showed up with gifts for the kids. I showed up with liquor for the band, and I showed up with T-shirts. There 3 of them are on the cover of Wingspan, the book Wingspan, wearing a shirt that says Twitter, etc. And I gave them all that shirt. But now, so look, everything's going pretty good. I'm going down on a regular basis. They get to know me. I'm really the only one there, and I'm keeping it pretty hush hush about. I'm not bringing anybody down with me initially. And as soon as I get off from work at 2 p.m., I hit the interstate, and in 20 minutes I'm there, and it should be about 45 minutes. But in about 20 minutes I'm there. And they got to asking me things like, hey, do you know a steel guitar player we could get? I said, yeah, you can get Pete Drake. He's a great steel guitar player. And they said, well, Paul doesn't want to get him because he played on Georgia's stuff. So I get that kind of insight. The one thing I took down, well, let me tell you what happened. I pulled up one day. It's hot. I'm coming up on the entrance, and I see Alan Crowder, more or less the road manager for Paul. And he's got his shirt off, and he's out at the entrance, and he's got a hammer, and he's working on the mailbox. And that's something I hadn't seen before. And as I eased up and rolled down the window, I had my head off the window, driving real slow, trying to see what he was doing. And I eased up, and I said, Alan, what are you doing? He nodded like this. He said, they blew up the mailbox.
Oh, God.
He said, Paul is pissed.
Uh-oh.
So I quietly rolled up my window and eased up because I was responsible for this action. And here's how I was responsible. I had a friend who was in the National Guard.
Oh, Lord.
And he brought home something called artillery simulators.
Oh, Jesus.
And I was afraid of them. They looked like, number 10 cans of peaches, but they were camo.
Yeah.
They had this pin on the top.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't about to go there with it.
No.
So I put them in a little bag I had, and I handed them off to Jeff. And years later, Denny Lane called me out of the blue. This is 30 years later. He calls me, and I said, Denny, remember when you guys blew up the mailbox? He said, that was Jeffrey. So they get a little bored down there sometimes during the day because they would practice later in the afternoon. So they're just trying to figure out what to do. And they blew up the mailbox. Now,
it surprises me that it was Jeff. I thought it would have been like McCullough because he was, the kid.
Well, but no, it ended up being Jeff. I mean, they were all pretty young guys at that time. And looking for some mischief and something to do. Jimmy got his share of trouble, but they all, Denny went fishing late at night and caught some fish secretly because Linda was a vegetarian. And he secretly took them into the kitchen and cooked them, and so Linda wouldn't know about it. You know, they were all doing. But eventually, what happens is I come back one day, and they had asked me about a motorhome. They said, "Do you know anyone that has a motorhome we could use?" And motorhomes were not something in '74 you could just go rent anywhere.
Oh no, sure.
So I told him, no, I don't. But I sensed that they were getting ready to leave, to head out, to leave Nashville. So I thought I better get down there and get some of this stuff I had taken down to them. I took down a case of records, which included bootleg records, and they told me, whatever you do not let Paul see these bootleg records. So I wanted to retrieve them, and I had a box of magazines that had wings on them, and they were sitting around the breakfast table one morning, and I had been looking at one of the magazines. I said, "Denny, when you were in Nigeria working on Band on the Run, why'd you shave your beard?" And Jimmy McCullough stands up and he goes, "He knows more about us than we do." And they all got a big laugh out of that. But I retrieved my Rickenbacker bass.
Oh.
And I took it. It was there at the guest house. Paul had returned it. Now, Jeff says this about the bass. Jeff says the bass was a problem for Paul, it being there, because he had it up at the garage at the rehearsals and he was playing it, but he couldn't bring himself to keep it because he said he didn't want to deprive a fan of his instrument. So eventually, after about 3 weeks of having it, Paul decides that it would mean more to me. This is Jeff's words, that it would mean more to me if he kept it and played it and then returned it to me. And
I have a question for you, Dan. That's an interesting insight into Paul, but also very interesting insight is that he didn't want to use the same backup musician or studio musician that George used, and he didn't want to use. You get where I'm going. It's interesting in that they say sometimes it's not such a good thing to meet your heroes. In your case, was it a benefit to learn this about Paul, his little quirks, his idiosyncrasies? In other words, what I'm asking, Dan, is did this make him more human to you?
Well, it gave me insight to the politics of rock and roll.
There you go.
That kind of thing, you know. Now here's something else now you guys got to understand that when I got back home with this Rickenbacker bass,
that's beautiful.
Paul played,
beautiful, really nice.
He had 50 years ago. I, being young and dumb, sold it.
Oh.
I sell it, and the guy I play in a band with, who I still play today at times with, and I took to meet Paul, scolded me heavily every weekend. Why did you sell it? Why didn't you keep it? Well, I just saw something shinier and newer and said, "Hey, I want that." And I sell this to a gospel bass player in my hometown who's in his 40s. But after being scolded for about a month over this, I called him up and I thought I would buy it back. So I called him. I said, "Hey, it's Dan. I sold you that bass. I think I should have kept it. Can I just buy it back from you?" And he said, "Paul McCartney played this bass. I wouldn't take nothing for it."
Wow.
So for decades in my hometown, I kept track of this bass through third parties. Instead of me asking him, "Do you still have it?" I would ask people in his circle,
Mm-hmm.
Does he still have the bass?
Right.
And in 1995, I look in the local newspaper, and there's his obituary. 1995.
Wow.
And I'm thinking honestly a little bit about the bass. So some
Yeah.
time passed, and I got in touch with his daughter and asked her to return a call to me.
Yeah.
And she called. I said, "This is Dan. I'm the one that sold the bass to your dad. I had a lot of emotions tied up with it. Would you mind one day? I won't take much of your time. Could I come by and just put it on and just play it one last time? I won't take but 5 or 10 minutes." She said, "Dan, when Daddy died, that bass went to his sister in Nashville."
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I said, she goes, "Yes." And she was only 54 years old, and she died suddenly. I don't know if it was stroke, aneurysm, heart attack, but she passed just like that.
Yeah.
And she said her daughter got it, and we don't know for sure what happened to it. They may have pawned it.
Yeah.
So I asked her for the name of her daddy's sister's daughter, her cousin. I asked for her name. She gave me her name. It took me 30 days, but I tracked her down 16 miles from here. And I asked her about the bass. And she said she didn't know what happened to it. Don't know. Don't know what happened to it. So I tell my friend Billy, who was scolding me to get it back, I said, "It's over. It's gone." I said, "It's in some pawn shop somewhere. It's under somebody's bed. Besides, Billy, I didn't write down the serial number. How would I ever know if I got it back?" He said, "Let's take a look at it." He said, "Let's look at that picture of you with it in 1974.
Right.
There I am over here with it in 1974. He said, "You're lucky. It's got 2 dark spots on it that are usually not on those instruments." And he said, "If you ever find it, that's how we're going to know." So under the pick guard, right there on the bottom, you see that
2 dark spots.
spot?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the first
Yeah.
one. At the top, right above the pickup, do you see that shaded?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
That is the key to where I'm going
Wow.
with this story. So Billy says, "Let me take a picture of that and I'll put it on my iPad." I said, "For what?" He goes, "Well, if I'm out and I run into it, I'll know that that's it." I thought he was talking crazy. I said,
Right.
"You're not going to find this bass anywhere. What are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, you know, I go in pawn shops and I go in music stores. I might see it somewhere." I was like, "Yeah, okay, well, go ahead. Put it on your iPad in case you run into it somewhere. But I'm buying me another one." And that's what I did. I went and bought me another maple blonde 1974 Rickenbacker, and I closed the book to this journey, I thought. Okay. So I'm happy now. I've got my replacement Rickenbacker. It looks the same. I'm dealing with the loss, and I'm moving on. I said, I got to move on.
Right.
And then we have this arrangement. I call Billy 3 times in a row if I have an instrument that I've found somewhere that he might be interested in. And if he's busy, he knows to get on the phone to me.
Sure.
He does that to me 3 times in a row. On May 19th of 2017 at 10:30 in the morning, I was on the phone with my insurance company. And Billy's calling at 10:30 in the morning. And I see him on the phone. I'm looking at the phone. I see it's him. And I just I just sent him the voicemail. I go back to my insurance company. I look down. He's calling for the second time. I sent it to voicemail, and I went back to my insurance company. Now, call number 3 comes in. And tell the insurance company, I got to take this call. And I hear my phone go off that there's a voicemail. But I didn't listen to it. And I just called him back, and he answered, and I said, why in the hell are you blowing up my phone this morning? I'm trying to talk to the insurance company. He said, if you're not interested in this bass, I may just buy it myself.
Uh-oh.
I said, okay. All right, what do you got? He goes, in town, the donut shop? Yeah. He goes, the pawn shop across the street? Yes. I said, Chris? He goes, yeah. He said, I just walked in there, and Chris said, hey, Billy, I've been meaning to call Dan about a bass. You think he'd be interested in buying one? He goes, probably not. He's got a bunch of basses. What is it? He goes, it's a Rickenbacker. He goes, okay. What year is it? He said, we looked it up. It's a 1974. Billy goes, okay. What color is it? It's maple. It's been in here over 10 years.
Whoa.
Wow.
He goes, what? He goes, well, it come in and we put it in a warehouse. And the next day we got a huge truckload of stuff. And we moved everything in the warehouse and we forgot about it. And it got covered up.
Wow.
Until yesterday. And Daddy found it and set it out and we sold it.
Whoa.
Sold it. He says, do you think Dan would be interested? He said, let me go get my iPad. I'll be right back. He said, I went out. I got my iPad. I found the photograph. And he said, I just stuck the iPad in Chris's face without saying anything. I just went. And Chris said, that's it. That's it. That's the bass. Billy said, he said, look, the guy that bought it from me yesterday, he's not a musician. He comes in, he buys gold and silver here from the pawn shop. And he says he'll buy a guitar just to flip it if he thinks he can make some money on it. And he bought it. Do you want me to call him and see if he still got it? Now, they don't know the McCartney story.
Right.
Wow.
All right. So Billy says he hears Chris calling. He goes, hey, man, this is Chris, the pawn shop. I sold that bass to you yesterday. Do you still have it? Billy said I could hear him on the earpiece. Yeah, I still got it. He goes, you want to sell it? He goes, that's what I bought it for. He said, well, there's a guy here in town. If that's his original bass, he'll probably buy it from me. I'm going to give him your number and have him call. He goes, okay. So they call me up and they tell me this. And I'm not convinced. It could be any number of a maple 74 Rickenbacker. And I'm just saying, okay, I'll check it out. Let me call the guy. So I call him. I say, hey, man, this is Dan. I was calling about the bass. Yeah, if it's mine, I'm interested in it. But I've already replaced that bass with another one, and I'm pretty happy with it. If that's not the one, then I'm not interested in it. Can you send me a picture? He goes, oh, man, it'd probably be tonight sometime. I said, tonight? I said, you couldn't send me one now? I said, I'll send you a picture of what it should look like. There's 2 identifying marks on it.
Oh.
And I said, let me send that to you. I send it to him. I said, you see that spot just like I did y'all? He goes, yeah. I said, could you send me a picture? He goes, man, it's probably going to be tonight. I said, you couldn't do it now? He goes, well, I live in Smyrna and I'm in Nashville and I'm not home and it'd probably be tonight. I said, is there any way you could call someone at your house? Just have them take their phone, open the case, and just snap a picture of the front and send it to me. That won't take long. Is there any way you could just do that? He goes, no, man, it's probably going to be tonight. I said, okay. Okay, I said, well, look. All right, look, you've got the picture, you got my number, so just let me know as soon as you can. I appreciate it. So I hung up, and then I went to my garage where I have 20,000 records.
He ain't lying.
And I said, I can't sit around here and think about this all day. I'm going to go in here and get my mind off this. I wanted to resolve this very quickly, but I can't now. I have to wait. So I was out there going through records, and in about 20 minutes, my phone went off. And I looked at it, and it was him. And I'm going to show you the message, exact message from my cell phone that I got because I put it in this book. And right there is the guy, and right there is the message. I ran home to shoot you pictures. I said, oh man, I think it's mine. He goes, looks like yours from the picture. And I said, wow. I'm in shock.
I'm in shock.
Right? I'm in shock.
So I told him, hey man, market value is $1,500. If you'll meet me in Lebanon, Tennessee right now, I'll buy it from you. He was in Nashville, and I'm in Lebanon where Junior's farm was. That's where I wanted to meet.
Yeah.
And so he says, okay, I'll go home and get it, and I'll hit 8:40, and I'll start texting you. So I ran into my wife's office, who cares nothing about this whatsoever. But I run down the hall to say something to somebody. And I go in her office, and I stuck this phone up, the picture up to her face. I said, I think I'm going to get my bass back after 42 years. And she just did this. I said, okay. So I ran out, and I hit forward, and I sent it to my friend Billy. And he calls me, and he goes, man, there's no doubt about it. That is it. We found it. And I said, I'm coming to get you. Where are you? He goes, no, I can't go. I said, what? You're entitled to an hour lunch. I don't care what your company says. And we'll go down there, and we'll be back in an hour. And yes, you're going. He goes, man, I'm at the vet. I got my big lab with me. My wife's here. She can't handle him by herself. I can't go. I said, I'm gone. I'll talk to you later. Bam. And I got on the interstate, and I headed 60 miles. The 60-mile journey I've made many times in 1974.
Yeah.
But this time, it seemed like that I got there like in a minute and a half.
Wow.
Sure.
I don't know how fast I was driving, but now look, you have to, there's one thing I got to point out to you and your listeners right now. How does Billy, my friend that I played in a band with all these years, and I introduced him to Paul, how does he walk into a pawn shop in my hometown 42 years later and discover this bass?
Here's the remarkable thing. 2 of the previous owners pass away. And this bass has passed along. Yet further along down the road. This is certainly not the norm under any circumstance. I don't care what you believe in, folks. There's divine intervention here. Somebody's going to make sure this bass gets back to Dan Ealey.
Yes.
Here is the photo of me at the farm, actually, Denny handing the bass off to Alan to take up to Paul.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
yeah, for sure.
Now, look, I got to tell you something here. When I would hook up backstage with Denny and through these years, before I got the bass back, I would wear this picture right here on my T-shirt. It would be, well, right there it is. You see me.
Absolutely.
50th anniversary.
I would wear
Yeah.
that, and Denny would point at it and laugh at it, and we would talk about the bass, but it was gone, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm talking to Denny backstage one day, and I got away from him for a few minutes, and I was talking to someone else over here, and Denny blurted out, he wouldn't let me keep it. I thought he was talking about something else.
Yeah.
And I looked over at him. I said, what? He said, he wouldn't let me keep it. I said, who wouldn't let you keep what? What do you mean? He said, Paul. He said, once he decided he wasn't going to keep your bass, I wanted it. But he wouldn't let me keep it. He said, there's only going to be one Rickenbacker in the band, and I play it.
Oh.
So there's another little insight to it. You know, so Denny tells me that many years later, I get that bass back, and I get in touch with Denny, and I book a gig for Denny, and I bring the bass, and Billy is with me. And we had the poster blown up very large of the bass, and we pull it out after this meet and greet Denny's doing. I said, Denny, you want to see the bass? He said, yeah, let's see it. And he goes, how do we know it's the same one? And I just pointed at Billy. I just pointed at him, and Billy pulls out this big poster of it. And immediately Denny says, there's no doubt about it.
Wow.
And he poses with me 42 years later.
Same picture, 42 years apart.
42 years later.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
With the same bass.
Remarkable.
And
absolutely remarkable.
And Billy, my friend, signs an affidavit about it, the story and the details. And Jeff at this time is still in Spain, and I'm in touch with him. It took me 4 years to track him down, and I don't know he's going to come to Cookeville, Tennessee and play in my band the next year. And so I have to send him an affidavit to Spain. And he signs the affidavit. And
amazing.
Denny signs the affidavit.
Absolutely.
So that's the journey of the bass. And then a couple of years ago, a kid in Nashville who's an up-and-coming artist named Jonathan Pushkar shows up at our event that Jeff Britton, the guy who would not come and talk to anyone and do interviews for anybody, and I talked Jeff into getting on a plane in Madrid and coming to Cookeville and talking to everybody. So this kid, Jonathan Pushkar, shows up at the event. We all meet him. Jonathan shows and plays Jeff his CD. Jeff said, the only problem with your CD, Jonathan, is I'm not playing on it. Jonathan said, we'll fix that the next time. So 2 years later, Jonathan does a video and a cover of Junior's Farm. He calls me up about it. I said, Jonathan, you know, I've got the Rickenbacker bass. You know, I could play the Rickenbacker on Junior's Farm because, well, the record companies. He said the record company's got the bass player from Toto or something, some band. And I said, that's okay. I just wanted to mention it to you. Whatever works out on it. So some time goes by, and Jonathan tries to get me to set up with the new owners of the farm where he can shoot video there. And it's a pretty tough sell. And I told him, I don't think I'm doing any good for you, but I know a guy who flew a drone over it. Who's a very good with the drones. And he used it in his video documenting the story of Paul in Nashville. I could ask him if we could use the drone footage. And that's the footage that ended up being used on the video. And Jeff Britton is the drummer, and I'm the bass player.
Wow.
So that's how it just does this full circle thing, you know?
Wow.
Absolutely.
I called Jeff up
Unbelievable.
after Jonathan called me back one day and said, "You still want to play on the record?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "How fast can you get to Nashville?" I said, "I'm almost in the car right now." Yeah, not that far.
Right.
So I played on it. I listened to Paul's track on it and isolated, and I went down and recorded the part. But then, and Jeff recorded his part in Madrid in the studio. But here's the thing. I got back after all this, and I called Jeff and I said, "How is this possible? I met you guys at the farm as a 19-year-old kid, a fan.
Mm-hmm.
How is it possible now that I'm playing with you on the record and it's Junior's farm?" It's just bizarre.
Wow.
It's serendipitous, Dan. It's absolutely serendipitous. Hold
That's
that
true.
thought, everybody. We're going to take a little station ID break. We shall be back in 2 minutes and 5 seconds.
Two.
Do you have sweaty balls or volleyball netty balls? It's time to make them ready balls. The Manscaped.com Lawnmower 3.0 will do the job and clean your knob with its patented no-nick head, so your head will function as desired. Enter promo code WrestlingFuture for a generous 20% discount. That's enter Wrestling Future for a 20% discount. Manscaped.com and Wrestling with the Future, going balls to the walls with Manscaped.com and the Lawnmower 3.0. Your balls will thank you, and so will we. Our special guest is Dan Ealey, the guy who changed music history. He doesn't know that, but he did. Dan, are you fully aware of your impact on music and what Junior's Farm meant at that time and how it impacts today?
Well, sometimes I get aware of it because authors call me up and they bring up things to me that it never occurred to me. And one was Adrian Allen, who wrote the book McCartney Appreciation. 2 books, I think.
Yeah.
They should be here somewhere. Yes. Right here they are. Wings Live.
Wow.
Yeah, what a book. What a book. See how thick that is?
Wow, it is thick.
Now he did 2 volumes of this. And I'm in the book because he determined one day, he called me, he said, Dan, I think I've figured something out about you. He said, I think you're the first fan in America to hear Wings live. I said, whoa, wait a minute. Let me think about it. Wings Live, the first fan in America. Let's see. They toured the UK. The 2 members quit, and Paul and Linda Denny went to Nigeria for Band on the Run. Then they came back, and they got Jeff and Jimmy. They got on a plane to Nashville. And when they counted the song off, I was outside the garage with my cassette deck. I guess that's true. But it had never occurred to me. So that's a little mind-boggling to me.
There is a video. I want to set this up first before we do anything. Let me set this up here. There's a video I put together. It has several clips, all involving Dan and his connection to Paul McCartney and Junior's farm. I'm going to ask everybody to indulge me. I'm going to let the entire clip play first, and then we'll talk about it, Dan, on the other side, okay?
All right.
There you go.
36 years ago, Dan Ealey used his teenage ingenuity to get past the gate. Tonight, Dan's stories, his pictures, and some amazing tape recordings that have never been heard before, including a hit that Paul wrote in Wilson County and recorded right here in Nashville.
You could try, but you'll never top Dan Ealey's single greatest summer vacation.
It's the summer of '74. I'm 19. I've been a Beatles fan since the beginning, '64. I'm in a band.
And Dan's got a plan. The newspaper says Paul McCartney and his new band Wings are hanging out at a Wilson County farm. Dan convinces Melody Maker magazine that he's an experienced reporter who can get a scoop. With a typewritten letter and a name to drop, he finds the front gate of songwriter Curly Putman's farm and spots McCartney's band members killing time on the lawn.
I said, hey, we got guitar in the car. You guys want to see this Les Paul? I said, yeah, bring it out. So we bring out the Les Paul, and my first comment was, hey, can you show us the opening lick to Band on the Run? And Jimmy McCullough takes the guitar and plays the opening riff. And after that, we were just hanging out and talking about music.
He was in every day for 3 weeks, often bearing gifts, like this embroidered Henley shirt for Paul. Dan was trusted to man the gate one night when special guests arrived.
Jerry Reed, Chet Atkins, and Roy Orbison. I could see Paul in the binoculars. I said, he's got my shirt on. He's got my shirt on.
Soon, Dan gets brave enough to take a borrowed cassette recorder to the farm. His tapes have never been broadcast before. Listen closely through the wind noise. The hits are unmistakable. And a new tune they seem to be practicing forever.
And then it's 2 months after they leave that I'm driving down the road and I have my radio on. It's the riff, and it's Junior's Farm.
Dan had no trouble recording 2 hours of music. That is until Paul's daughter Heather stepped in.
She says, my mother sent me to find out who you are.
Oh, my mom said to me, what are the people doing down there? And I said, I suppose they're Greg's friends. And she gave me a look and saying, if they aren't, get rid of them. Why don't you, go out to lunch or something and come back in a couple of hours?
Well,
Or just go out for a drive or something?
Paul McCartney's practicing. I want to hear him practice too.
It's been 36 years. The snapshot may have aged, but not a single detail has faded.
He went out of his way to be nice to me. I was behind the doors and behind the gates and hanging out with him, and it was a magical time for someone who has always been a Paul McCartney fan.
Dan Ealey, that's another one. First person to listen to Wings on American soil.
He knows it. Dan Ealey knows it wherever you are. Dan Ealey pretended to be a photographer or a reporter. I said, I've got to do it. He blagged his way in. And we couldn't get rid of him for 40 years, but there he is. Nice to see you, Dan.
And Dan's the one that has got the biggest history for me personally and our relationship going back to 1974. Dan is an exceedingly creative person, and he managed to get himself into our circle by posing as an interviewer for an English rock paper, like a reporter. And from that moment on, he became part of our team there. He was there every day, and he was just great.
The only guy ended up being one of our best friends through the whole Wings thing, and you're hanging in there, still sending the wine. And see we get.
Well, a bit messy. A bit messy, but aggressive and fun. Jeffrey!
Oh my God.
Wild Angels, but they had a very predominant 50s greaser rock and roll image. Well, any band that goes up and down the motorways and it's a gigging band, we spend all those hours locked up in the back of the truck or whatever. And then you get to the gig and it's a bit of a release to do the gig, and then there's all the hours back home. You kind of you get a sort of pent up emotion. And what happened was we got a Duff boarding house, and I don't know how it all came about, but anyway, Billy's bed got nailed to the ceiling.
Where I cut my teeth.
That's where he got it from, yeah.
And so I get the letter, and now I hear it's on Franklin Road in Lebanon. So one Sunday morning, I drive down there. Franklin Road goes forever. It just goes on and on. So they said it's a doctor's house. It looks like a mansion, and it has a swimming pool. So I get out of the car. I'm driving down. I don't see a doctor's house. They all are small houses. So I'm ready to give up. And there's only one guy even on the road that morning. He's a farmer, and he's got overalls on. And I stopped and I said, do you know where there's a doctor's house with a swimming pool and it's a mansion? He said, there's not one here at Franklin. I said, are you sure? He said, there's not one. I said, it's a doctor's house. He said, there's not one. So I was thinking, I'm going to give up. And so I said, well, he's not going to know who they are. He's 80 years old. I said, well, one of the Beatles is staying there. He said, you mean those fellas from England? And I said, yeah. He said, well, they at Junior Putnam's place. I said, where's that? He said, just right up the road here, but they don't have a swimming pool.
It's true, he didn't have a swimming pool.
No, he does now.
He does now.
And that is Dan
Unbelievable.
the late Denny Lane.
Incredible.
We should tell everybody for Rico's benefit. Amelia knows this. Dan and Denny Lane, the late Denny Lane, were very, very close. Why was it, Dan? And I never asked you this before. Why was it that you and Denny connected on that level?
I don't know. It's just we always, every few years, we would connect somehow. I was in the UK and I was buying some Beatles memorabilia. I bought John Lennon's personal watch from his Apple Watch.
Wow.
And I bought Brian Epstein's tea set and some other items. And the memorabilia dealer said, I know Denny's manager. Let me give him a call. Well, I was in his office and he called. He said, Denny's not there right now. He'll be back in about 20 minutes. And the 20 minutes passed and Denny called and he and I spoke and he invited me to one of his shows. He said, if you'll come, you can come backstage and we can hang out. But I couldn't make it to the show because of where it was located. I went on up to Scotland. I went to Paul's farm in Scotland. But after that, I was contacted by Denny's ex-wife who asked me about locating some guitars that they thought had been stolen from Denny.
Right.
And she didn't know I knew Denny until I sent her a picture. I said, I know Denny. Are you on your cell phone? And she said, yes. Let me send you a picture. So I send this photograph of me and Denny. And she says, I'll call you back in a minute. And the phone rings and it's Denny. He goes, oh, I remember you. And after that, we just connected a lot, and became really close friends. And I did some work for him when he needed it, when I could be helpful to him. And we had a lot of laughs. And, you know, I would go to his shows and I would take a bottle of Elvis wine, which wasn't his favorite, but I didn't care. I gave it to him, and it became sort of a running joke.
I heard you hated that shit.
Yeah,
He was not a fan.
and I would get other people that was going to see him to go get a bottle of Elvis wine and give
Elvis wine.
And so he knew it was me. So the last time I met with him was on the 3rd of February last year, and I thought, he's going to think I'm going to bring him a bottle of Elvis wine. Now, that video is on YouTube. You guys can find it by typing in Dan Ealey, Paul McCartney, or Dan Ealey, Denny Lane. But I go backstage, and we shoot a video of this. And I said, Denny, I know you think I've got a bottle of Elvis wine. I know you would think that, but I don't. Look what I've got. And it was me and him on the bottle.
Junior's Farm wine.
And he signed it for me. You see that?
What was his reaction when he saw that picture and he thought he was going to get the Elvis wine?
He thought the Elvis wine was coming. And he said something in the video about, wouldn't that be the name of the great band, Denny and Dan?
There you go.
But
hell of an idea.
He would be somewhere on the road, and he would just call me and talk to me. Once my phone rang a couple of years ago, and the voice on the other end is Denny, and he says, "You're a Wings fan." And I took that to mean you're not a Moody Blues fan. That's just the way I took it. I'm not sure if that's the way he meant it. He goes, "You're a Wings fan." And I said, "Well, Denny, yes, that's true. I am." But the next time I go see him, I took him the Go Now Moody Blues album, and I asked him to sign it. One of the fun times we had with him was Billy and I are going down to see him, and we're on the interstate, and Billy pulls out this vintage guitar strap. And he goes, "Look, what do you think about me giving this to Denny when we get there?" So let me see it. Flip it over. It was vintage orange strap, and it had Tennessee on it, like the Tennessee football team.
Sure.
And I said, "Flip it over. Let me see the backside." I said, "There's a pen down in my console. Let's me and you sign the backside for him." So we get to the gig. We sign it on the backside. And we're going to see Denny, and Billy stretches it out, and he says, "Hey, Denny, I want to give you this guitar strap." And he's looking at it. It's orange with white letters. He goes, "Oh, no one will miss me with this, will they?" But then he flips it over to the back. He goes, "What's this?" And Billy says, "Oh, well, that was Dan's idea." And Denny looks at me and goes, "I bet." He goes, "I bet." And I said, "Well, Denny, you know how we're always coming up to you, bringing you items. So, Denny, would you sign this for us? Denny, would you sign this?" I said, "I felt like we needed to sign something for you." And he says, he looks at me and goes, "I don't think that's ever happened before."
And I think he probably meant that as a compliment.
Yeah, I think
it is time to open up the questions.
Yes.
Pitbull, fire away.
In the video that we just watched, I saw that you just let them play like little snippets of the songs that you had recorded while you were there the 3 weeks. Why didn't you never release the full songs to the public?
Well, because for legal reasons, I don't actually own the rights to the songs.
I see.
Legally, Paul and I both own the songs jointly. And so I haven't allowed anyone in 50 years to record them except that snippet that you heard. And I allowed them to do that so I could wet people's tongue with it. And so just recently, two of my friends who are huge McCartney fans requested from me, can we come down and will you play us the entire Junior's Farm tapes? And we did. And they wrote this, she wrote this tremendous review about it. She was moved to tears by it. We listened to the whole thing, including a phone call that I recorded with Jimmy McCullough at one time. And so one of these days, maybe they'll become part of Paul's anthology and heal on them.
Well, Dan, I have a question along those lines. It's kind of a slippery slope you find yourself in that as a private citizen on private property, you're recording this material for your personal use, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, but now it goes public and now it's polished and it's produced and there are lots of lawyers and money involved. How do you not, I guess I'm trying to figure out how to say this. How are you not liable or no one's come after you for publication rights or just the fact that you own them?
Well, I'm entitled to own them as long as I don't distribute them. Sell them.
To give them
gotcha.
But one of these days, maybe Paul will be interested in them and MPL, and we'll see what happens on that. In the meantime, I've sat on them for 50 years. I've had the opportunities with AI now and all the technology is out there. It would be a pretty amazing to hear what they would say.
Oh my God!
Oh, absolutely.
Thinking about that.
Yeah.
Also, Rick, why don't you Rick, do me a favor, carry along that line of questioning. I because especially with your knowledge of the business and the fact that you've been entertaining for 40 years, you know, and you and Dan have that conversation.
Okay, I started off, Dan.
Well, I don't own the rights to the music. I own the recordings, but I don't own the rights to sell the recordings.
Okay, who owns exclusive rights to it?
Well, it would be Paul and I, according to the music attorneys. Paul and I are joint owners. I can't do anything without him, and he can't do anything without me.
So you two can't just collaborate and say, you know what, this might be the diamond in the rough, and you know, collaborate and put it out there, because I'm sure the Beatles fans, Paul's fans, would love to hear it, even though we're like, you know, at that age. But I think we would really enjoy it.
He's probably thinking. He's probably thinking, not that kid from Junior's Farm again.
Rick, that's an amazing point. Dan, he brings up a very valid point. At some point, you know, guys like you and I, Rick, you know, we're on the other half of that margin. We're closer to the end than the beginning.
Right, right.
So at some point, wouldn't you think? I mean, think about the money for you. It's you're looking at, you're already like a gazillionaire, I'm sure. But you're.
Let me count my money. Wait a minute. Let me count some money. Okay.
But I'm sure that there's a substantial payday in this somewhere along the way. There's got to be someone with enough insight to bring you and the McCartney team together and say, you know what, there's value here.
That would be amazing. That would actually be amazing.
Yeah, I could have always sold them to Michael Jackson.
That's true.
Yeah, right.
Also,
be thankful you didn't sell them to Michael Jackson.
Right? And you had I had another question real quick. You had said that she had, you know, you had somebody wrote a wonderful article about that. How about you? Have you still decided to write your own book, like Paul McCartney Knows Your Name? I know you came up with a great title. Last time we spoke.
I get hammered about that almost daily. Someone messages me and says, they're hammering me. Why don't you? When are you gonna write that book? When are you gonna write that book?
I'll be one to buy it too.
Well,
really, that would be honest. But my thing is this: not only would it be a great payday for you, but it would actually go down in musical history as one of the greatest. I'm not going to use the word con, but as one of the greatest getting into the beat, getting in with Wings, getting in with Paul McCartney. I mean, that to me, I hate to say this, but I'm kind of breaking up here. Angelo, my phone is breaking up. Can you hear me?
We got you.
I can. Yes, sir.
Okay.
We can.
Yeah, because my phone is breaking up. But my point is this: that will go down in history the way, and I'm not exaggerating here because, like I said, I am a major Beatles fan. I'm a Paul McCartney fan. I just love him to death. I think his music is great. It tells a whole. It went. My life centered around their music and music such as that. But getting back to that, I think it would go down like Rocky.
Well,
it would be a legacy like Rocky.
Interesting point, Rico. That's a really interesting point. It is kind of, Dan, think about it. It is kind of a Rocky Balboa story,
Yeah.
The other interesting thing, and I would love to have your take on this. People have, and of course, in various ways, people have noted and made note of your contributions in not only keeping the Juniors farm legacy alive, but kind of being the banner runner, the ball runner with it.
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
Guys our age, we remember, but there's a whole generation of young music fans who are just now discovering the Beatles and Wings and the Moody Blues,
Yes.
Guys like that. And you're an integral, whether you know it or not, it's like I said at the beginning of the show, whether Dan Ealey knows it or not, you changed music, brother.
Yes.
And I don't know, the colloquial way to say it, you really did.
Well,
and that's your legacy, or a part of it anyway, for sure.
Absolutely, it is.
The thing about being at the farm and recording them is I knew all the songs. My Love, Jet, Band on the Run.
Oh my God.
Little Woman Love, Hi, Hi, Hi. I was hearing all those, but then I heard something I could not figure out what it was. And they kept doing this riffs over and over and over endlessly. And Denny came down one day after rehearsal, and I was pretty bored with it. And I said, Denny, I said, what was that song you guys kept playing over and over and over and over? He said, oh, you'll find out later. And what I found out was on October 25th of 74, as I was driving in my car, waiting for WLS Chicago to come on, because I don't know how it is in other parts of the country, but here on the radio AM 89 WLS, it didn't kick in till the sun went down. So we would be on our radio dial, turning it back and forth, watching the sun. Where's WLS? Where's WLS?
Wow.
Back and forth. And then when the sun reached a certain point down behind the horizon, it would click in. You would hear John Records Landecker, WLS Chicago.
Yep.
And he said, I'm going to premiere a new song from Paul McCartney and Wings. I'll be right back. And when they came back, they hit it, and I heard that riff, and I said, that's it. That's the song. That's the song I heard at the farm. And I pulled over, and I went onto a payphone, and I called up WLS and got John Records Landecker on the phone because I was ecstatic. I said, that's Junior's Farm, the song I have on my tape. I have
my God.
on my tape in June,
Oh,
but they didn't record it till July 9th. So I am the first person to hear Junior's Farm in its entirety. Jeff says that Paul had the idea before they left the UK for this Junior's Farm song, but
oh my God.
they didn't have it together because I'm hearing them in the garage, the keyboard and the guitar trying to synchronize their notes on that opening riff.
Yeah.
And eventually on my tape, you hear the complete song. And what I did when Jeff came over in 2019, I had him in the van. Billy's driving. I'm in the passenger seat. Jeff's in the bench seat behind us. And he did not know that I had a copy on CD of the Junior's Farm tapes in the car with me.
Oh,
Had this all cooked up with Billy. I said, I'm getting tired of driving without hearing any music. Let's put something in, Billy. Billy throws in the CD. We cranked it up. I said, wow, Jeff, that sounds like you. He got up on his seat and he was leaning forward. He goes, that is amazing. When I told him the other day, 2 people are coming to my house and I'm going to play the entire Junior's Farm tapes for them, he said, I've not even heard the entire tapes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But somebody else.
Yeah.
But you know, talking about the Melody Maker thing, after all those years, I mean, I did get the job. So I really wasn't lying when I got to the farm. I was authorized.
Oh, sure.
So here's what's funny. Years later, 40 years later, I connect with Chris Charlesworth on a blog he's writing and about the Beatles in some city in the UK. Yeah. And I chime in on it and he figures out who I am. And the next week, he writes the blog on me. Junior's Farm, Dan Ealey, Melody's Maker Man in Nashville.
Wow.
And he tells the whole story. And he says, there's a line in there you'll have to read. I don't know if I can quote it right, but it's a pretty remarkable line. He says there's a fine line between something about exaggerating and expertise or something. So there's a fine line between it, but that he applauded me for what I did, even though I never wrote the article.
Essentially, what Dan is telling everyone is he bullshitted his way into.
That's what I'm saying.
To me, Paul McCartney.
As a 19-year-old kid, he BS'd his way into a reporter gig and got to meet Paul McCartney. Is what happened. Let's be honest about it.
For whatever reason, they ended up liking me, and I ended up becoming their friend for 50 years.
Well, let's talk about that, Dan. We've talked a lot about, and over the course of your appearances on this program, you've talked a lot about the interaction. The one person and only one person who could have put a huge foil in that is Linda McCartney. In fact, at one point, she sent her daughter. Can you tell the story of what I'm referring to?
Yeah, well, I was out in the field, and apparently Linda had looked out from the house and saw me hanging out down in the field. What she couldn't see, thankfully for that far away, is I had a strap on my shoulder with a cassette recorder and a separate microphone. And so I hear this sound.
Oh.
And it's a horse with Heather on it, her daughter, and Rusty, the German Shepherd, approaching. And for a 12-year-old, Heather is pretty firm talking. My mother sent me to find out what you're doing here. If you don't belong here, to get rid of you. I did my best to stand my ground and still not be rude and not get kicked out. Now, what I think happened after that is I think the band sort of covered all that for me because they would going up every day. And after all, I had given Paul the bass, right? And I gave him the shirt on his back at his birthday party. So I think all that got cooled off by the band, because after that, Paul and Linda would come down. This is the story about my friend Billy, who was a huge Beatles fan. We met at about 14. We played against each other in a talent contest. We'd never met. He had a band. I had a band like in the 6th grade. We played against each other. We found out that the both of us are huge Beatle fans. Well, I would go to his house on weekends, and it was all about the Beatles. All these years later, he's playing in my band, and I'm going to see Paul McCartney every day. Am I at some point not going to ask him to go? This was weighing on me.
Sure.
So one day I stopped by his house on the way to the farm, and he comes out in the driveway, and I've not made a firm decision that I'm going to ask him to go. It's on my mind, and I'm sort of wavering. And he comes out, and I get out of the car, we're talking, and I finally just said, "Hey, you want to go meet Paul?" He said, "I'd like to." I said, "Let's go." So he jumps in my station wagon. It's about 95 degrees. We hit the interstate, and about halfway between where we live and Lebanon, I had a flat tire on the interstate. It's brutally hot out, and I'm down there changing this tire. And when I finally get the last lug nut on and I throw the wrench in the back of the car, I looked up at Billy. Billy's about 6'4". I looked up, I said, "You just want to go back?" He said, "We might as well go on." I said, "Okay, if you want to." So we get in the car, we pull in down at the farm. Billy gets out. He waits at the driveway where you can see straight up the driveway. You could see a car coming for a long way. And I go into the guest house where the band is. Suddenly, Billy runs in. He says, "Come out here, bring your camera. Paul's coming down the driveway." Well, they would often come down, and Paul would stop and talk to me, and Linda would be with him. So this day, Billy's standing there with me. Here comes Paul and Linda in the Mercury rental car, 1974 Mercury rental car. And as he slows down, he rolls down his window, and he stops, and he hangs his head out a little bit. He goes, "How you doing, Dan?" And all I did was Billy was standing behind me. So I turned.
Wow.
I turned like this. I went,
"Wow."
And Billy goes, "Paul McCartney knows your name."
Oh, unbelievable. Unbelievable.
So I said, at that point, then I took a picture of Billy with Paul, and Billy took my picture with Paul.
Yeah.
And I told him, "Billy, if I ever write a book, I'm going to call it Paul McCartney knows your name."
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's how that title.
I love that. I
I
think
love
that's
that.
brilliant.
And I want to tell
That's
you,
brilliant.
I want to tell you about in 2022 when Paul was coming to Knoxville, which is an hour from me, hour and a half.
Oh, I love this story. Yes, please, Dan, tell the story. I love
Billy
it.
called me. He said, "Hey, I got two tickets to go see Paul in Knoxville. Are you going?" He said he and his wife were going. I said, "No, I don't think I'm going to go." And he was like he was gigging me on the Rickenbacker. He's doing it about that. He goes, "What? You're not going? You're not going? Paul's in Knoxville. You're not going to go see him?" I said, "Look, man, the tickets I want are $3,000 each." I said, "I've seen him. I met him for nothing, and you met him for nothing. So I don't think I'm going to go. I don't think I am." Well, I had been trying to, at the farm, I did not get my Rickenbacker bass signed by Paul. And I've always thought maybe I could get that done sometime. At the farm, I had it around me in the field, ready to ask Paul to sign it. He would have signed it in a heartbeat. But like I've told you earlier in the show, you're kind of young and dumb at 19. And I looked down at my bass like this. I remember it very well. I looked down and I thought I could have him sign it on the pick guard. Then I looked, I said, I don't want Paul messing up my bass.
Oh my God.
So I flipped it over like this, and I thought, maybe I could have him sign it on the back. But I never did, and it's a blessing.
It's a good thing that you didn't.
It's a blessing because when I sold that bass and it went through those couple of hands, 3 hands, I would have never got it back if they had Paul McCartney's name.
Never.
Now, on that pawn shop story there, I left out a part I want to tell you. In that warehouse, one day I was in there. Remember the guy said the bass was there for 10 years? But he didn't know it? I, too, was with him back there one day looking at a piano. So we're actually in the room with the bass.
Wow.
But here's what happened on the concert. So this guy in England, the guy in England's been trying to help me to get my bass signed. And he told me someone to email at Paul's office about it. And I did. He sees Paul about 4 times a year at the Liverpool Institute. They're all on the stage together. And he's got his gown and cap, whatever he is, his robe on with Paul, with the golden tassels and all that. So he told me to email an office person at MPL, and I'd done that. 6 months later, about 3 weeks before the concert, he calls me. He says, Dan, did you ever hear from him at MPL about your bass? I said, no, I didn't. He goes, well, look, I'm going to be in Knoxville. I'm going to be in Nashville next week. Do you want to get together, see if there's some way I can help you with that? I said, yeah. And so he comes to Nashville. I tell Billy, hey, the Omen, it's happening. We got to go see this guy. Yep. So we take our guitars, we go down, meet him at his hotel, take the Rickenbacker, take pictures of him with the Rickenbacker, and he meets us. We take him to the farm, we eat out with him, and we do the whole bit. And I tell him, look, man, COVID's still going on. Paul's got restrictions. I don't think it's going to be a good idea to do it in Knoxville. So let me just send you a Rickenbacker pick guard. If you run into him in London or Liverpool, you're 4 times a year, maybe he'll sign it for me. So that's what I did. I sent a copy of the pick guard. And so the next week, I get a call from him. He goes, Dan, I got something for you. He goes, I'm shocked, but then I'm really not shocked. I said, what is it? He goes, I got you $2,000-$3,000 tickets from Paul's office for the Knoxville show.
Wow.
So I have to launch a plan. So I go and I take that photo of me and Paul, and I get it blown up with this architectural plans printer, and I have it laminated. Huge. It's right up here. It's right up here. And we get to the back of the building where Paul comes in. He's coming in his SUV, and he rolled down the window, and I have him about 20 feet, 30 feet from me, pointing at me with the sign. You've seen it, hadn't you, Angela?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
I've played it on the show.
Yes.
He's pointing right at me and grinning. And then inside, I moved from the 10th row to the 3rd row. As he cuts on the lights, it starts to read the signs. And he says, I met you at Junior's farm. We did record Junior's farm right here. So now, about 2 months go by, and my friend has the pick guard in England, and I see him on social media with Paul one day.
Yep.
And I call him the next day. I said, hey, you got the pick guard? I saw you with Paul today. He goes, Dan, I'm going to take it tomorrow. So of course, I couldn't sleep that night. And, but he tells me the next day that he told Paul, hey, this pick guard is from the guy who gave you the Rickenbacker bass at the farm. And he says, Paul says, I saw him in Knoxville,
Mm-hmm.
which was pretty remarkable just to have him.
Yeah, he remembered you, sure.
He would remember that.
Unbelievable.
But he declined to sign because he was in front of 500 or 600 people.
Mm.
And he says, he tells everyone he doesn't sign. So.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
And we know that's BS because there's an exorbitant amount of video where Paul will literally stop his car and sign, Hofner bases. That's
right.
About that. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about? Damn, let's talk about that. That was big news in the last year. Paul McCartney finding his original Ed Sullivan show Hofner bass.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Let's talk about that. How you want to talk about a guitar, making the rounds? Boy, this thing certainly made the rounds.
Yep.
You know that guitar intimately well. Tell that story, Dan.
Well, it's actually the bass that he played in the cavern, his first Hofner.
Oh,
and,
gotcha. All right. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And it went missing and was gone for many years, and they put out the word that they wanted it back, and it happened. It came back to him after all those years.
Sure did. It sure did. A lot of it, and it's funny how the things parallel each other.
Well,
your Rickenbacker ends up taking a journey, and basically the journey is all around you, but never directly to you, and you never really have to go too terribly far to find it. A lot of years in between, certainly, yes.
Well, my question has been definitely satisfied. Now I know the story of why he went to a Rickenbacker.
Yeah.
Which is a fantastic story. My God. Wow. Unbelievable.
Well,
yeah.
I had my first Hofner bass when I was about 14. I've owned over 100 of them. And I became a Hofner dealer, and I had 3 Hofners signed by Paul. And I have several Hofners here, right here. But I played them in the 60s when if you didn't play a Fender or a Gibson, you were considered a third-rate musician, and a Hofner was a novelty. But I've always been known for having the Hofners.
Yeah.
And so I've had a lot of them. And the weird thing, it's a crazy story real quick. I was standing on the stage at my local university because I lived 4 blocks from there. And once I found out as a kid at 10 or 11 that I could walk to this university from my house, imagine it gave me a lot of activity. But here we're located between Knoxville and Nashville. And in the 60s, those concert promoters were trying to fill the space in between the week. So they play Knoxville on Friday, and then they were going to play Nashville the next weekend. So they would pick up this university gig in between. So I didn't really have the money to get in, but I lived 4 blocks from there. And I know that the Yardbirds are going to be playing there with Dick Clark's Caravan of Stars. And I have the album Over, Under, Sideways, Down. And I go up there and I go inside the building and I unlock a window that's outside is bushes that gives me cover. So
good way to go.
Oh my God, man.
I open the window, I go in all around. These rooms are classrooms during the day. And the door that goes out into the hall has a small window like this that you can look out. Now, when you look out into that hall, it's full of people because the concert is taking, people are there for the concert. And also security is there from the university. For that split second, when you turn that knob and go out that door, you're totally exposed to that door shut and you get a few steps away. I never got busted, but I go in and I watch the Yardbirds play. And before it's over, I run outside because on the way there, walking through the university, I saw the bus. So I go to the bus. I stand between the bus door and the door to the building, and the door opens, and it's Jimmy Page.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Yeah.
It's Jimmy Page. It's only me and him. He walks out with his guitar case. He walks out with his guitar case. I know exactly who he is. I have their album over under Sideways Down.
Sure.
And I looked at him. I'm 12. And I looked at him and I said, "You're with the Yardbirds." He said, "That's right." I said, "When are you coming back to Cookeville?" He said, "Never, I hope."
I kind of thought he would say something like that.
If you don't know Tennessee, if you don't know Tennessee, between Knoxville and Nashville, there are 3 areas that were on what they called the circuit.
Yeah.
You had Cookeville, Crossville, and what was the other one, Dan? Cookeville, Crossville, Jackson,
Murfreesboro.
Wow.
Murfreesboro, where my friend Kathy Twitty lives. Shout out to Kathy Twitty, Conway's daughter, dear friend of mine. If you were anybody in the business at that time, you did Knoxville, Crossville, Cookeville, either Jackson, Tennessee, or Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Closer, when you got the closer to Nashville, you got.
Yeah.
So
and a lot of I'll tell you, who was the other one you ran into? I'm thinking Neil Diamond. Didn't you have
on another occasion? I'm going through the door there.
Yeah,
you got to make your way up 3 flights of stairs to the back gym where there's the stage, and when you go through the door on the back wall, it goes into a little gymnasium back there, and that was their green room. I'm making my way up the stairs, and as I get to the 3rd landing, the girls' basketball dressing room door is open, and I'm standing there staring at Neil Diamond.
Oh
my God.
And he's got a Gibson guitar around his neck, and he's got one laying on their bench where the girls sat in front of their locker, and he's tuning them together. And I'm staring at him because I know exactly who he is. I was way up on music. And he's staring at me, and I'm staring at him, and I'm scared to say anything to him. So I'm just staring at him. I'm like, oh my God. And suddenly he goes, "Don't you know there's people's vagabonds in here?" And I ran.
Yeah, Neil Diamond.
But listen to this Hoffner story right here. There's a group called the Association.
Yes, sir.
They're on stage, and I'm hid out backstage. I'm actually on the stage with them near where the curtains bunch up at the end of the stage. That's a little pocket there that I can hide. And there's a back curtain that goes around. It's got a slit in it where they can go back to the green room, right? This group from the Northwest, Washington or Oregon, named Don and the Good Times, is a support group. They used to play on like Where the Action Is or something.
Oh, sure.
They come out, and they're in the wings there on the stage, and the association's playing Never My Love, and this bass player has got a Hoffner bass around his neck, and I've never seen one in person. I've only seen it in a 16 magazine, right? And I don't know what was going on, what I was staring at, how big my eyes were, or whatever was going on, but he talks to me. He goes, "Do you know what kind of bass that is?" Well, the headstock on those basses had a script logo, looked like it was cursive writing. And in a magazine, that H actually, to me, looked like a K.
Yeah.
So he goes, "Do you know what kind of bass that is?" I said, "Yes, that's a Cathon." He said, "No, that's pronounced Hoffner." I said, "Well, Paul McCartney plays one." he reaches for his bass on the stage when they're playing associate, and he comes up with it, and he takes it off, and he puts it around my neck.
Wow.
And I'm holding it like frozen here because I was not expecting this. I'm wondering, why is he doing this?
Right.
And I raise it back up because I just wanted to give it back to him. And I said, okay. And I handed it back to him. Now, all these years go by. I owned 100 of them, played them many years, 3 by McCartney. And one of my friends, I'm telling him that story one day. He says, you need to find that guy. You need to tell him the story. And you could do it. So I found a lead guitar player on the West Coast that played with Don and the Good Times. And they changed bass players a couple of times. And I thought it was this one bass player. So when I get the guy on the phone, the guitarist, who said he also played with Paul Revere and the Raiders, I tell him who I think his bass player was that did it. And he said, no. Did you say during the Caravan of Stars? And I said, yes. He said, he was gone. Our bass player for the Caravan of Stars was a guy named Ron Buzz Overman. Buzz was his nickname. Ron Buzz Overman. And he said, that's a fantastic story. I said, I don't know why he would have done that. He said, I'll tell you why he did it. Because he's a fantastic guy. That's why. He said, and I've got his phone number. He lives in Arkansas. Wow. And I'm fixing to give it to you so you can call him. I said, as soon as I hang this phone up, I'm picking it back up and I'm calling him. So I called him. He answered the phone. I told him the story and I said, the old gymnasium is still here. I have a Hofner bass and I know the exact spot we did this. If you'd like to come to Cookeville, we'll recreate that moment. He said, let me get your information and I'll get back in touch with you. About 2 weeks went by. He called. He said, Dan, I was having dinner with my wife last night and I told her that story and she burst out crying at the table. She says, you need to go there and you need to meet him and you need to do this. The sad thing is he got sick. He died of cancer and it never happened.
Oh man.
I know.
But you know, that was that guy's influence on me backstage, taking his bass off, putting it around my neck, that influenced me to have 100 Hofners.
Remarkable.
Absolutely remarkable.
I will tell you what, it is never a dull time when Dan Ealey is here.
Yes.
We could sit here for
I
hours.
know. Great.
In
Ask
fact, we have for the last
questions.
2 hours sat here and listened to Dan Ealey. And I want to tell you what, brother, you are my friend and a welcome guest here.
My friend too. Yes.
Thank y'all.
You're no longer
he's family.
You're part of the family now.
Well, let me tell you what happened when Jeff Britton told me that. Jeff's in Spain. He calls me one day. Says, Dan, anytime you want to come over and stay, come over, stay as long as you like. So one day I called him. I said, I was having it was some difficult, aggravating day for some reason. I said, Jeff, I think I'm going to sell everything I got. I'm going to get on a plane and I'm going to come over there and move in with you. Well, there was this silence. Jeff, are you still there? He goes, yeah, I'm here. I said, Jeff, listen, don't worry about it because I won't stay long because you know why? You do not have air conditioning. That's about I said, that's about 2 days for me. I want to say this. I want to say a special tribute and honor to Paul and Linda McCartney, to Jeff Britton, to Denny Lane, and to Jimmy McCullough, who befriended me 50 years ago, remained friends with me through the years, and it's been a great honor to have been a part of that. And they were just my favorite group, and I've been able to live that experience for 50 years.
Absolutely.
Remarkable. Junior's Farm 50 years later with Dan Ealey, the man who was there from the beginning and has a story
Look at that.
for a life. That is, people have,
That's
amazing stories. Let me tell you something. Nobody, I don't care who you are, folks, nobody's got a better story than Dan Ealey, by God.
Thank you.
And yeah, you really do. And I also want, again, thank you so much for introducing me to Jeff Britton today on the phone. We had an amazing conversation. I'm glad that you witnessed that. I'm glad that you were on the phone with us to hear. We spoke about drumming, martial arts, music, how old I was, the fact that he helped influence me. He and guys like Bernard Purdy, Buddy Rich.
You know what I spoke about during that conversation?
Yes, sir.
Nothing.
Exactly. And we spoke for nearly 20 minutes. And he was extremely, extremely generous.
I was holding my phone like this.
Yeah, right? He was extremely generous with his time, with his energy, and Jeff Britton. If you get a chance to see this show, and I want to make sure that Dan Ealey sends you a copy of our show. Thank you so much. You made a little boy's dream come true. I felt like a kid today. I really did.
Aw.
I really did. Amelia.
Yes.
I'm gonna bring you up on a big one. What do we got coming up?
Well, tomorrow we're going to actually be speaking again about double gangers, lookalikes, deep fakes. So people have been wanting us to bring that show again to them.
Yep, the imposter syndromes. It's a big thing right now.
Again, it's coming back more force now.
What do you think about that, Dan?
Well, I have to put my investigative cap on for that, don't I?
I'm telling you what, man. It really is kind of a detective's worst nightmare, really, because the lines between reality and make believe are becoming thinner and thinner.
Yeah.
To tell. And tomorrow on the show, we're going to take the deep dive.
Okay.
Oh yes.
We're going to take that deep dive tomorrow night. It's fascinating subject matter. What else?
Check it out. I'll check it out.
And
yes,
then
sir.
on Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to revisit the death of George Reeves, of the original Superman, who really killed
Superman.
I love that one. He was my favorite Superman.
Here's a little. He died. He was murdered 1 month to the day. That before I was born. He was killed on June 10th, 1959. My birthday was July 10th, 1959.
I remember being in shock at school, in grade school, and my friends telling me Superman got killed. I said, what?
Yeah.
You know,
the death of Superman. Absolutely.
Yeah. Loved him.
This is the second show that we will do on that subject. We have, thankfully, the LAPD kept that open, and there is new compelling information on who may have actually killed George Reeves, actor that we know as television Superman. Interesting case for sure. We have confirmed that television actor, TV's Hercules will be joining us again. Kevin Sorbo will be here in November to promote his new films. He's got 4 of them coming out, and he'll be joining us to talk about them. And in fact, I confirmed that with him not too long ago. And Rico's back. Here he is.
Yeah,
Rico's back.
My phone went dead. I had to find the plug to anyway, I'm embarrassed right now.
No. Look, brother, let me tell you something. It happens all the time.
It's
really
internet.
It's one of them things. It just happens, man.
Thank y'all for having me.
Thank you so much for coming back.
I will say this from my heart. I consider you my friend, my brother. I'm here for whatever you need. And I like to believe that you're there for me as well.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Dan
Ealey,
yes.
You are a treasure. Thank you so much. God bless you, my friend. Have a great night.
Thank you again.
Absolute pleasure. Great to meet you.
That
Wow.
is a remarkable guy.
Mhm.
Dan Ealey is a
Mhm.
treasure trove.
Unbelievable.
Tell you, he is.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you what, Rick. He's the guy, man. He's the guy.
Mhm.
Unbelievable story. I got to tell you, his story is fascinating. It really is. To rub
Mhm.
elbows with one of the greatest stars ever. Come on.
Oh my God,
Absolutely.
yeah.
It,
It's like he said on the show previously and even today. He said, I met Beethoven.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and he did.
Think about that.
He did.
Yeah.
And to go out of your way to meet your favorite artist, that is
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Think about the power that music compels us to.
Mhm.
It's
Rick,
our life.
you're a guy who knows well. You sing in front of audiences. People react. People cry. They
Yes.
smile. They fall in love all over again.
Yes.
Music has such a powerful, such a visceral impact on people.
My God.
I mean,
Yeah.
think about what music, Rick, has done for you, what it's done for your life, for your career.
Yes.
You
And
have a career because of music.
yes, and it's not only that, but it has carried me through. Like, not going back to the Beatles or anything, but like the long and winding road. I could take myself back when I was a kid. I remember my aunt telling me she came into the house and she said to my mother, she said, "Listen, we're being invaded by Beatles." And this is God's honest truth. I was panicking. I'm like, my mother said, "Listen, YO, it's a group that's coming over from England." I'm like, "Oh, okay, I don't have to panic."
That kind of Beatles.
Yeah, and that's a true story.
Uh-huh.
I remember, Amelia, I'm really going to give myself away. I remember, and Rick, you know too, 1964. I remember watching the Beatles. I swear to you, I remember watching them on the Ed Sullivan Show when they came to America. I remember that like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
All I remember was not hearing a single word of any song because the women were screaming so loud.
The girls, yeah, they overpowered everything.
Oh boy,
they really did.
They sure did. Amelia, what else we got coming up, kid?
Oh, on the 24th, next Monday, we have the Unsocial Media, which is vessels of misinformation of what social media gives you. Do you believe it or not? It's up to you.
Yeah.
Wow.
We have a couple interesting shows coming up. That's going to be, I promise you, Rick, that's going to be the rabbit hole, the mother of all rabbit holes.
It's got to be, really.
Yeah.
It would have to be.
It really is. That is one of those, it's kind of a, God, like, it's like, where do I start?
What social media platform do you want to start with that's either going to give you the truth, or are they lying to you, wanting
Wait
you
a
to
minute.
believe it?
I'll give you something that happened to me very, very recently, like a matter of days ago.
Oh yes, please share that with your. I know. Go ahead. Yeah, share
For
that with
the
us.
second time, second time in 5 weeks, Facebook shut my account down for violating community standards.
What?
Wait a minute. Here's the thing. I wasn't even on Facebook, and I had no post.
No, he did not.
I violated nothing. Let me tell you what actually happened. I tried to connect my StreamYard with Facebook's new live policy. Okay?
Oh, okay.
Because, listen to this one. You're going to love this one, Rick. Because Facebook, quote, did not recognize me, unquote, it blocked me out as an imposter.
Yes.
Oh my God.
I had to literally, I'm not even making this up, folks.
He's not.
I had to literally send them a copy of my driver's license with my photo. I had to send them a picture that I may have posted on Facebook so they can compare. It took them 2 days to validate that I'm Angelo DeCipio.
Yeah, 2 days.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Amelia, please tell me if I'm
No,
lying.
he did that, and then just recently it happened to him again.
2 times.
Unbelievable.
2 times. It's remarkable. Unbelievable. I'll tell you what, folks, this is one of the things I love about having a show like this. We can explore. We're not afraid to get our hands dirty. We have amazing guests like Dan Ealey, and thank you, Jeff Britton. I had the amazing pleasure of speaking to one of the greatest rock and roll drummers in the history of music, Jeff Britton. And we talked about everything, music, drumming, martial arts. Just an amazing, wonderful, wonderful guy. And I think he's going to maybe think about doing the show with us.
That's fantastic.
He has to heal up first.
Oh.
He's feeling a little under the weather at the moment. He took a little bit of a, little downtime for himself, which is good. We all need that,
Oh, absolutely. All the
rest
time.
and recoup a little bit, because I'm gonna tell you what, this guy's busy. He's plays and he's always God bless him. I wish I had that kind of energy when I'm 80. Okay.
I know. My dad's father had that kind of energy before he passed away. And
I don't know where they get it from. I really
tomorrow would have been his birthday, by the way, too. So he shares a great birthday with Paul McCartney.
Yeah, tomorrow is Paul's birthday. It sure the hell is. We are What's the Buzz, America's Best Podcast on WWTF Radio 88.7 on the broadband radio system at Mad Dog Media. I am the Mad Dog. She is the Pit Bull, and that's Rico Suave style.
Yeah,
our friend Rico style. I have known Rick for so long. You know what? One of these days, instead of being the co-host, you, my friend, are going to be in the hot seat as the guest.
Oh, okay. That sounds
your
good.
ass in
that
the
way
hot seat.
we can.
That sounds good.
His songs and
because I'll tell you
the
what,
lyrics and stuff.
Rico's got a story to tell, brother. I'm gonna tell you, he's got a story, and I will tell everyone. We are here every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday on What's the Buzz, America's Best Podcast. For Amelia the Pitbull Chapman, for Rick Style, Rico Style. I am Angelo, the Mad Dog DeCipio. Join us every week for something new. Every time you join us, there's another pit bull lurking in the. She never know what she's going to do. She's a sneaky little shit. This one, you got to watch for her. Every time I think I have my show planned, she throws a monkey wrench in it.
Yep.
So you never know what kind of show we're going to do because you never know what Amelia's up to.
Especially with Joe Biden telling you that to prepare for the hurricane season, you better be vaccinated.
Oh, fuck Joe Biden.
That's what he said. I'm not kidding.
Oh, my God. Are you serious?
Yep. On that note, my friend, take care. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow night. Willing in the creek don't rise. Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.